Now, from CBS 4 News, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Good morning, I'm Jim DeFede, and welcome to Facing South Florida. Now, in full disclosure, we are taping this show Friday afternoon, and barring some last-minute Hail Mary, we're likely in the midst of a government shutdown. Now, whether it is the Schumer shutdown, as Republicans want to label it, after Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, or the Trump shutdown, that Democrats will call it, naturally depends on your political persuasions. It has been interesting to watch the divide play out here in South Florida. The House Democrats all voted to shut down the government, and they were joined by Republicans Carlos Curbelo and Ileana Ros-Lehtinen. They are demanding that any bill to fund the government include a fix for DACA. Here is what Ileana Ros-Lehtinen told me earlier this week.
I am going to vote no on the budget if there's not a permanent legislative fix to Dreamers. There will be people who will criticize me and say, you caused a government shutdown. And I'm saying, look, when you say that something's a priority, then you've got to treat it as a priority. You can't say it's a priority, so let's do everything else except for this. Well, if it's a priority, there is no reason why we cannot have a legislative fix to Dreamers this week. And will it result in a government shutdown if we don't have it? If not enough people vote for the budget? I guess so.
Now, their colleague, Mario Diaz-Balart, said he supports the Dreamers, but voted to fund the government without a DACA fix. On the Senate side, Marco Rubio made it clear he would vote for a shutdown. Let me rephrase that. He would not vote to shut down the government, whether there was a DACA fix or not.
I do not believe you can shut down the government of the United States over DACA. In fact, one of the implications of doing so is the government will no longer be able to process the permits that people are applying for. So it's almost counterproductive. I think we need to fund and keep open the U.S. government, and I think we need to deal with this issue in a way that recognizes that if you're going to deal with DACA in a permanent way, you're going to have permanent changes to the way we enforce immigration laws.
Now, Senator Bill Nelson, who was up for re-election this year, wouldn't tell me in advance how he was going to vote. So whether the government is shut down or a temporary plan was put in place at the last minute, central to all of this is the question of what to do with nearly 800,000 so-called dreamers. These are the folks who were brought to this country illegally when they were children. But when you hear numbers like 800,000, it's hard to keep in mind the individuals behind those numbers. So while Washington digs into their hardline positions, I thought it would be a good idea to take a step back and talk to one of those dreamers. Joining me now is Neri Lopez, a DACA recipient and a member of the group United We Dream. Neri, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you. So
tell me a little bit about yourself. Where were you born? When did you come to the United States? Tell me a little bit about your story.
Well, I came here when I was 4 from Mexico with my family. We arrived here because my mom was assaulted back in Mexico. Crime is really high. And one of the things is that they wanted my brother. He was a fair skin, a few months old. So that really scared her, so she decided to take that risk and
What do you mean
here.
They wanted? Who wanted
They
him?
wanted to buy him. It's crazy in Mexico, but one of the things is that sometimes, especially like gangs, they tend to like want kids, and then they buy them and then they sell them for higher prices.
So the fact that he was a fair-skinned baby meant they could probably sell him in the United States as if he was an American child or wherever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as a result of that, your family came here.
Yep.
Where did they settle first?
We have been residing in Orlando, a little town called Davenport, ever since then. That's where I've lived. That's where I was raised.
And talk to me about growing up there. Talk to me about that.
Well, it's literally the middle of the orange groves. It's a very small town. You know, it's very diverse. A lot of Hispanics. We all get along. I will have to say I didn't experience racism in that place because everybody knew each other. It was a nice, quiet place. Of course, there was also crime, but we all knew each other, and it was great.
How'd your mom make a living?
She did housekeeping. She's done housekeeping for probably 20 years now, and that's the line of work that she's been doing since we came here.
When did you realize that you were in this country, for lack of a better word, illegally, without proper documentation? When did that realization come to you? You don't know that at 4. At what point in your life do you come to realize that?
I realized that I was undocumented when I started wanting to think about college. I was probably my sophomore year of high school, and I never had the mindset of college. You know, I'm the oldest of 4, so I never had someone to look up to thinking, oh, they go to college, I want to do that too. So it was just like other classmates. I was in a leadership organization in high school that was pretty big, and I realized, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. And then I looked into scholarships, and I realized that I don't have that. You know, I don't have.
How did you come? Did your mother have to tell you, or who had to sit you down and tell you?
Even before that, like, we always, you know, I had to live in the shadows. I couldn't, you know, do other stuff, other kids. I realized I couldn't get a license when I was 15. I couldn't start a job, and then at that time. So in high school, it just came more of a reality that I wouldn't be able to apply for scholarships to go to college because I was not a resident or a U.S. citizen. I guess
what I'm asking was there ever that moment, you realized that you were living in the shadows, but was there ever that moment where you actually asked your mother, is this what's, and then she had to explain to you what your story was in coming here?
I guess not.
Okay, you just figured it out on your own.
I think it was just, there wasn't like a pivotal moment where it was, I don't know, I don't think there's a significant time.
When you hear phrases like, as you use it, living in the shadows, what does that mean to you? I mean, does that mean living a little bit in fear and uncertainty? What did it mean for you?
It's uncertainty, I think. Uncertainty because there's a time when there's rays of ice. And I remember a time, I think I was in, I don't remember if it was elementary school or not, but they were talking about it. And then I told my mom, and she's like, oh, we have to be careful. I think maybe that was a pivotal moment. Maybe that was a time when I realized the significance it was for my family. So it's that. It's just the fear that we would be separated from my family.
And you've never been back to Mexico?
No, I have not.
And you've received DACA status, and you're 21 years old. And your DACA, your status would end next January, correct? If it's not renewed or fixed.
I have 1 more year.
You have 1 more year. And right now you're a student at FIU. And you're in your junior year, and you're doing well?
Yes, yes. I hope to graduate soon and start like my career. Yeah. When
you see the debate going on in Washington and hear the different sides talk about it, you know, how do you view it? When you watch this play out, realizing they're talking about you, does it feel like they're talking about you, or does it feel like they're talking about something else?
It's a mix of emotions because they talk like it's not real people. They talk like it's when they don't make it an urgent thing, it feels like that's not me. That's not. They're not talking about us, the people who, you know, the 800,000 who are losing their status every day. I
want to play for you. This is something that was on Fox. You know, I think it was in September, Laura Ingraham, when President Trump made the decision to end DACA. This is Laura Ingraham, a conservative radio show host, also a host on Fox News. This is what she had to say.
I think people have to understand what the deferred action for childhood arrivals is really all about. We're not talking about mass deportation of people if Donald Trump doesn't do what, you know, kind of the middle or the left wants him to do on this. And I think there's ways to be compassionate to people, short of giving them work permits and federal benefits.
So is that why you're here, just for work permits and federal benefits?
No, not at all.
What would you say to Laura Ingraham if she was here?
I would say that you're not personally affected, so you don't know the reality. Our parents decided to make a decision to give us a better future for themselves and us. And it's not about a work permit. It's about doing our dreams here, you know, making our goals here.
Are you worried?
Of course. I have a little brother who has autism, and if something happens, as the oldest, I wouldn't be able to help my parents. Besides going to school, it's about also being able to financially help my parents. You know, it's my dream to give them their own house, for them to not break their backs working every day to help us. And you know, it's even harder when I have, you know, someone really close to me, my little brother, who has a mental disability that it could eventually, you know, he won't forever, he will always have someone who needs to support him. And if something happens to me and my parents, I don't know where he'll be. And it's been my responsibility, not only for myself, for all those people who weren't able to apply for DACA, who are still, you know, who have families, people who have, like myself, a woman who has kids, who has to raise them by herself. So it's not about just the work permit. It's not about just giving someone a Social Security. It's more than that. It's building our lives here and having dreams and being able to make those dreams a reality.
Another phrase that's often used is chain migration. You know, it's an ugly phrase, I think it is, you know, because it used to be about having the family and supporting the family, and you know, I know there's a lot of guilt among a lot of DACA recipients that while they may be protected, their parents may be left vulnerable or other members of their family left vulnerable for deportation. Do you feel that?
Yes, and it's not chain migration, it's family reunification. It's being able to give the person you love the same ability that you're getting, giving them the chance to also build their dreams. And yeah, it's something that it's important, and this is how this country's built, is through bringing new people, new you know, diversity, new places, and making our culture here. There's a lot of cultures in this country wouldn't be the same if we didn't have diversity.
Neri Lopez, I really appreciate you taking the time to come in and share your story. I think it's important for people to remember it's not an abstract. It's a very real thing for a lot of people like yourself. Yes. Let's keep in touch.
And last thing, I urge everyone to call their congressman to go out there and give their voice, because those who can vote, they have the ability to change this as well.
Well said. All right. We'll be right back after the break.